The story begins in 2017, a year when pain and hope mingled in ways I scarcely knew were possible. It was a time when our family faced trials that seemed insurmountable. The sorrow of losing our daughter, Samantha, to a rare and relentless cancer carved deep valleys in our hearts. She was only 12 when she left us, but her life, though brief, shone with extraordinary courage. Samantha had a way of facing even the darkest moments with a smile that could brighten the gloomiest of days. Her mantra, "Never give up and keep on smiling," was not just a phrase, but a testament to her unshakable spirit. Even in her absence, that light, that resolve lived on. And though our grief seemed too heavy to bear, it was her influence that began to shape the profound changes within our family. It was the kind of year where every tear was matched with a stirring reminder of something greater. A year when we were not only tested, but transformed. On top of all of those things, we found ourselves navigating a strange and turbulent cultural sea. In late 2010 or early 2011, we made the decision to leave the Catholic Church. For a number of years, we lived as unbelievers, adrift in a world that, while familiar, felt increasingly unmoored. It was as though we had stepped away from the safety of a lighthouse into a foggy expanse where the echoes of our past faith and the silent vastness of doubt collided. We still clung tightly to our conservative and traditional values, the anchors of our upbringing. Yet, without the spiritual foundation to give these values coherence and purpose, they seemed like relics of a shipwreck, fragments of something once whole. How does one preserve the form of values without the heart that gives them life? This was not just a theoretical dilemma, it was deeply personal. The family itself began to feel the strain, caught between the weight of inherited tradition and the pull of an uncertain new world. It was profoundly difficult to navigate this time. Imagine the complexity of steering a vessel when neither the stars nor the compass seemed to align. The journey was not merely emotional for me. It was a shared odyssey, one that included my wife, our children, and even the broader social network surrounding us. Each of us grappled with questions that loomed larger than ourselves. What is the true foundation of morality? Can tradition survive without faith? What happens to the soul when its anchor is cast aside? In retrospect, this period was a crucible of sorts, refining and reshaping the way we saw ourselves and the world. It was a time of questioning, searching and yearning, a journey towards something we could not yet name but felt stirring in the distance. Much like a ship seeking its harbor, our hearts knew there was something out there worth seeking, even if we could not yet see it through the mist. My children, like all of us, were grappling with the fundamental mysteries of life, and their questions served as a mirror reflecting humanity's unceasing search for truth. One day, my daughter, while immersed in the simple joy of play, turned to me and asked, "Papa, who built the builders?" At first, I dismissed it as a child's musings about her toys. But she quickly clarified, No, the builders of the universe." In her childlike way, she had voiced a question that has echoed through the ages, the search for the ultimate cause, the origin of all things. It struck me then that even the youngest among us sensed the reality of something greater beyond the visible. A few weeks later, my son Athanasius challenged me in a way only a growing boy could. He had been disciplined for disrespecting his mother, and in his frustration, he questioned the very foundation of morality. Why do I need to honor her? Who says it's right? What if I disagree? His questions were not born of rebellion, but of genuine inquiry, questions that have perplexed humanity for centuries. If right and wrong are merely opinions, as he suggested, then they lack any true authority. Yet if they are objective truths, they must originate from an eternal source, a divine lawgiver who imbues them with meaning and purpose. Then there was Ambrose, my middle child, who approached me one day with a quiet but profound revelation. "Papa, I pray now," he confessed. His words startled me, for prayer was not a habit we practiced as a family. Where had this come from? My initial response was dismissive, even skeptical. But when he explained, "No, it's not like God talks to me, but I still think it's the right thing to do," I realized he had discovered, in his innocence, what so many adults fail to grasp. Prayer is the heart's natural inclination toward its creator, a recognition, however faint, of the divine presence that calls us all to communion. What astonished me most was the independence of their reflections. There was no conspiracy among them, no whispered plans to provoke their father. Each came to me with their questions and revelations in their own time and way. Yet their inquiries were like tributaries flowing toward the same great river of truth. It reminded me of how divine providence often works, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet orchestration of seemingly unrelated events, guiding us gently toward the light. In their innocent and unpolished questions, I saw the hand of God at work, not just in them, but in me. Their curiosity and courage forced me to confront my own doubts and re-examine the truths I had neglected. As C.S. Lewis once observed, a child's faith often speaks with the clarity and beauty that adults lose amidst their distractions. Through their voices, I was reminded of the profound truths I had long ignored and invited to rediscover the faith that had quietly been waiting for me to return. As we were sitting and talking, my son Ambrose looked at me with those earnest eyes that only children can have, eyes that hold questions too profound for their age. He asked, "Papa, are we Catholic now?" The question, simple as it seemed, was like a pebble dropped into a still lake, sending ripples through my soul. For those unaware, my children, save for Samantha who has gone on before us, are named after doctors of the Church, not merely saints, but what one might call mega-saints, giants of faith whose wisdom echoes through centuries. The irony struck me deeply. Here we were, a family that had long abandoned the pews, grappling with questions of belief. Yet my children carried the names of spiritual warriors. I stumbled through an answer. "Well, you know, Ambrose, we don't really go to church anymore. We haven't for years. But yes, you're named after them." How hollow those words felt. Around Christmas time, we'd adorned our home with festive decorations, a tradition we clung to even in our unbelief. Each year, Ambrose's godmother would send us a piece for the nativity set. It was her quiet, persistent way of reminding us of what Christmas truly meant. Ambrose's face lit up as though an idea had just dawned. "Maybe," he said hesitantly, "we could talk to my godmother and go to church with her?" His suggestion caught me off guard. We thought ourselves safe from such overtures. After all, his godmother lived in Kalamazoo, a place far removed from our current life. But as Providence would have it, she had moved to our very town of Grand Rapids. There was no escaping this. Reluctantly, we went. It was the Christmas vigil. As the procession began, the familiar scent of incense filled the air, and the priest walked by. My breath caught. It was him, the same priest who had guided us when we were once devout Catholics. His presence felt like a sign, though I couldn't quite name what it meant. "Welcome home, prodigal son," he said after the service. His words echoed in my heart, though I knew my return was far from complete. We didn't stop there. Encouraged by the priest's words and Ambrose's persistence, we began attending daily Mass. I was struck by the sheer ordinariness of it, ordinary yet extraordinary. Each morning began not with hurried routines, but with a moment centered on the cross. My children, so young and yet so earnest, were captivated. Ambrose's earlier question haunted me still. Are we Catholic now? And as I watched them kneel, listen, and respond, I began to see the answer not in words, but in actions. Grace is a strange and persistent thing. It comes unbidden, sometimes through the innocent wonder of a child or the unexpected encounter with a familiar face. Like the slow, steady dawn breaking over a shadowed landscape, it reveals truths we thought long buried. And so, that Christmas, we began to rediscover a home we didn't even realize we'd missed. The church, I realized, is not just a place but a rhythm, a cadence of life that calls us to return, to repent, to rejoice. For Ambrose, it was a simple question. For me, it was the beginning of an answer that continues to unfold. There are moments in life when the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and one cannot help but pause in wonder. As I stepped into the church that morning, the scene before me was nothing short of heavenly. Rows upon rows of children, their uniforms crisp and orderly, knelt in reverence. The sound of their voices rising like incense in the morning mass filled the air, not with the usual discord of youthful enthusiasm, but with a harmony that seemed otherworldly. How often do we encounter such devotion, such purpose in young hearts? This school, I soon discovered, was no ordinary institution. It was a place where education was not merely the transfer of facts, but the cultivation of souls. Here, Latin was taught from the earliest grades, as if to remind these children that their heritage was anchored in something timeless. They recited the Pledge of Allegiance each day, grounding their patriotism in gratitude and duty. They read not just books but epics, Homer's Odyssey, Shakespeare's plays, Dante's Inferno. Even Beowulf became a living debate about honor and virtue, questions that transcended the text and reached into their very lives. Is it not a wonder to see children wrestling with such profound truths? Yet amidst the intellectual pursuits, it was the spiritual rhythm of this place that left the greatest impression. Each day began not with chatter or chaos, but with Mass, centered around the altar, the cross, and the Word. It was here, in the simplicity of kneeling after communion, that I first heard the angelic voices of Ambrose and Teresa singing Ave Maria. The purity of their song was unlike anything I had ever heard. It stirred my heart in a way that no earthly symphony could, drawing my thoughts to eternity and to the Creator of all things visible and invisible. As I reflected, I could not help but think of the questions my children had asked me before. Who built the builders? Why do we believe what we believe? These queries, born of innocent curiosity, now found their answers in the catechism, in confession, in the quiet examination of conscience. Ambrose, who once whispered to me about his private prayers, now serves at the altar with a joy that is infectious, and in his heart a spark has been kindled, a desire, perhaps, to dedicate his life to God as a priest. This school is not merely a place of learning, it is a beacon of light in a darkened world. It forms not just minds but hearts, shaping young souls to seek truth, goodness, and beauty. The nuns, with their simple habits and steadfast devotion, teach not just music, but the harmony of life itself. As I listened to the children sing that day, I wept, not out of sorrow, but out of gratitude. For in their voices I heard the echoes of heaven, a reminder that even amidst the trials of life, there is a hope that endures. They had the great honor of assisting Father Sirico during the baptism of our son Lucian. But what struck me most occurred during the Corpus Christi procession, an event where the temporal and the eternal seemed to intertwine. Picture this: the streets adorned with flower petals, bells tolling like celestial whispers, and voices raised in hymns that seemed to bridge heaven and earth. Children, joyful and reverent, walked in harmony with the faithful, embodying the unity of the Church. Periodically, we would kneel on the hard ground, offering prayers that rose like incense to the heavens, reminding us of the solemnity and beauty of worship. It was during one such moment of kneeling that my son turned to me, his young face radiant with sincerity, and said, "Papa, church is my favorite place in all the world to be." His words, simple yet profound, stirred something deep within me. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied, though I could sense there was more he wished to share. After a brief pause, he continued, "Well, I kind of feel like maybe one day God will want me to be a priest so that I can pray in the church all the time." At that moment, I could almost hear the echoes of eternity in his words. It was as if God himself had whispered through my son, planting a seed of vocation that only he could nurture. "The world needs you," I told him earnestly. "The world needs you big time. For isn't it true that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few?" This moment made me reflect on the beauty of faith lived out in community. The friends we've made within our parish have become like family, walking with us in prayer, sharing meals, and showing kindness that reflects God's love. They've been a source of encouragement and inspiration, reminding us that our journey of faith is never meant to be walked alone. It's in these shared moments, from singing hymns to supporting one another, that we glimpse the profound unity of the body of Christ. My son's innocent yet profound statement wasn't just about his dreams, it was about the calling we each have to be a light in the darkness, to stand as a witness to the transformative power of faith. Watching Ambrose, I realized how the Church, through its sacraments and its people, continues to shape lives and draw us closer to God. And so the procession, the bells, the petals, and the prayers were more than a celebration. They were a testament, a living parable of how the ordinary can become extraordinary when illuminated by the light of Christ. In the midst of this, my son's words lingered in my heart, a gentle reminder of the eternal truths that often come to us in the simplest of forms. Imagine a small flame that needs fuel to keep burning bright. This is a reflection of the journey of faith and knowledge where true values are nurtured step by step. If not now, then when? If not you, then who will help spread these noble values? We don't just share stories, we inspire and spark deep reflections on the meaning of life, faith, and love. Our goal is to create a space where people can connect, explore, and spread positivity together. If you enjoyed this content, hit subscribe to Compatibility World and join us in discovering more meaningful stories and sharing valuable lessons. This small act can help spread light to many more people. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you in the comments. Let's continue to spread motivation and light to those around us. Until next time, hold on to faith and hope.